I think we could follow up what we discussed the last time in the subject of awareness and mindfulness in connection with the thing we discussed about of the fourth moment. It seemed to be necessary for us to realize that some kind of understanding of our state of a being, state of a mind, in a very ordinary and very simple, basic situation, that the mechanics of mind functions in the sense of a basic existence, and also functions in the sense of a basic fascination to prove one's own existence. Those are the two basic situations that takes place. To reassure oneself that you exist, and then also reassure that your environment does exist, so you can exist at the same time. That seems to be the general process of function of the mind. It is necessary to have some training to cut down the need for securing your situation by proving that an environment exists. But on the other hand, the whole thing is being that completely and truly, fully way of describing the state of the mind. And at this point, we could say quite safely, actually, that the mind, it doesn't exist at all. It doesn't exist. But on the other hand, then what is this? That's precisely the point. What isn't this? We have to work into that particular area in which that we could have some kind of comprehension as to that even this does exist, but that may be too advanced for us. So before we get into that, we could discuss that doesn't exist. The things around us doesn't exist. The environment that we have created doesn't exist. Because the environment is largely based on the assumption that you exist. That environment is largely based on the assumption that you can manipulate your world. That as if the world is a flexible, yielding phenomena, that you can manipulate the world. And that's the whole thing, what's known as a game can take place. That you have developed some understanding, some idea as to that you could create this particular game by pretending that the phenomenal world does exist and you exist. And that is the problematic area that we have to look into it. Not so much to cut down the root, but trying to cut down the branches to begin with. The basic sense of that you can hold on to something, that things are tangible. not only tangible alone, but things could be manipulated constantly. It's becoming an enormous problem for us. That the phenomena world is not there. Actually, it is not there. Truly and fully, it's not there. Then you might say, what is there at all? Why can you say that phenomena world is not there? Why the negation at all? Well, we do not know. It is up to us to explore that negation. Or rather than that you've been given package deal, course study to prove that what you should understand is purely presented comprehensively. But one has to look into that problem, that the problem has been raised. It is up to you, it is in your turn to look into that possibilities of the phenomena world does exist. And moreover, if you want to be brave, or if you want to be more explicit and complete or perfect, that you don't exist either, but that's later. That comes later. Maybe that's too heavy a burden to discuss this point. But let us discuss at the beginning that the phenomena world doesn't exist. Why not? That's it. Why not? Why did you say why? That we have to find out why we said why, and who's saying why, and so forth. That there is a lot of conclusion that we can come to, which might be falsity, that you're trying to come up to conclusions that trying to find out, trying to have an easy way out. And all kinds of problems involved there. But however, it is worthwhile pursuit to relate with that particular situation by saying that phenomena world doesn't exist. And that search that you'll be experimenting doesn't exist. And you've been functioning on the level of a non-existence. That is to say that there's no territory, there's no maker of the universe, there's no functioning organism that takes care of you or destroy you at all. We are talking this concept altogether in terms of phenomenological level, experiential level, and that is a very important key point, that we are not talking in terms of existentialism at all. We are talking purely phenomenological level that we could experience and we could explore ourselves, but not an existential level. That's very important. And meditation practice is in the level of dealing with the phenomenological world, if there's any at all, in a very naive way, that you sit and practice as much as you can, and trying to find out if there's anything to find out at all, and disciplining ourselves if there's anything to discipline ourselves at all. And therefore, the whole question here is that you are dancing with the space, if there's space at all. We say there is space, it is untangible, and the attributes of space is that and this. But we are talking about existence of space purely from the point of view of boundary, reference point, rather than existence of space as it is. So what we are talking here is that we are trying to do impossible, trying to understand the impossibility. And is this a complete nonsense? Maybe so. It doesn't make any sense. Glad to hear that. We've been thrown back and forth so much in the world of reality and the phenomena and the world of emptiness constantly that we try to make something out of it which has become the crux of the matter and the problem itself, that we've been trying to find out meaning of life and what is me, who am I, and what is this all about. Actually, there's nothing that we can talk about or explain in great detail or even anything at all that we do not know who we are, what it's all about is uncertain. Not only uncertain, but it is non-existent. Why we are talking such nonsense? Now that is the point. Why? I mean, why we are doing this? And you and I are here sitting down, and we make a big deal about that. We have microphones, we have for sound systems, and we have a hall, and we try to talk about it. Nonsense. That is the point. Actually, that is the point. Why are we doing this? Why? Even the question of should we do it or shouldn't we do it is not applicable, but why we are doing it. We might find ourselves that I cannot help not doing this. That's where rather feeble and somewhat strong logic, but it's a feeble answer. On the other hand, you might say that I like to find out why I am doing this. That's also very feeble and very weak point. That why we are here, why we are doing all this, doesn't have an answer. Or for that matter, does not have any questions. That the questions are non-existent. It is true that if there is nothing at all, then how could there be questions at all? Nonsense, uncertainty, maybe confusion, sense of complete at lost. That we do not know why we're here, we have no idea why we're doing this at all, even if there's anything to understand, and we have no idea who's understanding this to begin with. So things become outrageously gibberish, nonsense, absolutely nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense, absolutely not. And to begin with, this is a contradictory statement, but I would like to say it still, I would like to make sure that you understand this, is that we are doing this because we have nothing to understand. I would like to make sure 100% make sure that you understand that we have nothing to understand. I would like to take you that very seriously. And this is by no means conmanship and chickening out or speaking gibberish at all. But this is a fact, this is philosophy, doctrine, dharma, the truth, and all the rest of it. That I want you to face this fact, painfully deceptive or not, whatever. That we are trying to understand that we have nothing to understand. That's very important, the stepping stone to begin with. That is absolutely important. Otherwise, without that, we have no idea, at lost. The whole thing is gone and lost in a negative sense. If you understand that particular logic, particular positive statement, whatever, then you begin to feel the sense of environment, sense of totality, the sense of something lurking behind your intellect and intuition, that there is empty ground, empty space. A vacant space is hovering and wandering around your state of being. Basically, that there is that vacant space is taking place. And if you like to look closely to that vacant state, that what we're trying to do is that we make sure that we don't look for any understanding, any understandable situations, but we are just trying to be. Even that is bad way of putting it. We're not trying to be either, because there's nothing to be. Sorry about that. And that enormous vacuum, enormous space, enormous outward space that you begin to experience, that there is a dawn of enlightenment. Just a dawn. The message says that sun is going to shine because there is a little glow in the eastern hill. That is what's known as in the Buddhist tradition as dawn of enlightenment. And the dawn of enlightenment cannot take place unless there's a sense of desolateness and meaninglessness and being full to begin with. And then the dawn of enlightenment takes place. Actually takes place. Properly, you begin to experience traditional Western language is, we could say, the star of Bethlehem. Whatever, there is a birth of something's taking place. There's a star up in the midnight sky, which is black, deep blue, but there is a star shining. There is hope in the positive sense. There's something's taking place. Such thing cannot take place unless there is nightfall, darkness, and unless there is a sense of a destined desolation that you cannot mend or correct in any way at all. That there is a fantastic depression. In fact, we could call it a transcendental depression. It's a so powerful depression, even you can't feel that you're depressed, but you feel somewhat high on that non-existence, that the rug is pulled under your feet. It's a complete, vast, and vacant experience. And when we talk about a practice of meditation and awareness, we are talking in terms of the practitioner should be based on that particular experience of vacantness, non-existence, that you have emotions basically emotions of aggression, passion, fantasies of all kinds are taking place. But however, those situations that take place in you are the expressions of that particular dawn of enlightenment. It is a mere dawn of enlightenment, that there is something taking place, that you could work with your awareness, and at that point, the state of awareness is very cool and very quiet, and at the same time, it is very outstandingly bright. Outstanding. It's real that there is a consciousness which comes up to us, that we could experience ourselves in that level. There is something that we can communicate ourselves. We have already understood that there is no me, no self, no ground. But however, non-existence with those begin to make some sense, that non-existence of self, ego, being become a star of Bethlehem. The dawn of enlightenment begin to take place. It's real at that point, because the unreality has created a reality at that point. It's real experience. It's true experience. True as far as we can relate with the truth. That since we have lost the truth, therefore we could understand the truth from that point of view. That there is a sense of sadness, that we have lost any kind of sense of grasping on anything at all. Whole thing is gone and lost. There's nothing to hang on to. Because of it, there's a sense of desolation, there's a sense of enigmatic qualities of dawn of enlightenment is taking place. That's possible, that's reality in the very solid, ordinary, business-like sense. If you like to feel that way, you're welcome. We don't have to try to treat on a different pedestal. Such experience is the beginning of what's known as the Buddhist tradition of experience of shunyata. Shunya means empty, ta means ness, emptiness. And why we call emptiness by name is because of that the whole thing is empty, non-existent, therefore it does exist by itself. The basic point in the particular, in the Mahayana Buddhist type of practice is concerned, is that there's a real sense of loneliness, aloneness, sense of desolation, and therefore that you become an enormous, powerful hero, samurai. That's the basic point. That's why we refer this point, this particular experience as shunyata experience. Because there is a sense of complete nothingness, complete nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense. And because it doesn't make any sense in the whole together, doesn't mean anything at all, therefore that is it. Actually, there is point, but there isn't point at the same time, and that becomes a very lonely discovery, extremely lonely discovery. And very sad, because that you can't share with anybody. It's your discovery in the most of your heart. And it's so painful to discover that truth, that fundamental truth of non-existence and the loneliness. On the top of non-existence, it's okay. If you experience the truth of non-existence, you begin to feel okay. If I don't exist, if I could dissolve into some cosmic galaxy, then I don't have individualities of myself. That's kind of suicidal mortality sort of attitude that we begin to take. And that is the one way of getting rid of that pain. But if you are particularly interested, inspired into the path, then you begin to feel that that non-existence is not quite it. There's some kind of self-denial is involved. Then after that, you begin to realize that even dissolving whole ego mentality, ego hold, self-existence or whatever, then you begin to discover another star of David. There's beam coming out of darkness, of complete desolateness, and there's beautiful, wide-ranged desert. It doesn't even grow trees or grasses, complete open and complete evened desert. That in the middle of the night, in your being in the desert, you begin to see a star when you look up at the sky, which makes you more painful because the star seems to say to you is that, you are in the desert, you are helpless. And I'm up in the sky and I'm doing okay because I can float. But you can't float, you are just end up in a solid, on your ugly bottom, and sitting in the desert and being that. To you. And don't you see how ugly you are, how lonely you are, and how terrible you are, your state of being? That the closest place you can make a telephone call is maybe 100 miles. Can you walk? Or you can't. And the star is begin to tell you some kind of message. Truth, actually. The sense of shunyata from this point of view is extremely desolate situation that can be only experienced by sitting practice, going through Vipassana experience. And then you begin to realize the techniques that you've been hooked onto in the Vipassana experience somehow it doesn't make any sense. They are further conmanship, as a matter of fact. And you begin to realize that you can't depend on anything at all, none whatsoever. You find yourself sitting on a meditation cushion and absolutely doing nothing but that if it doesn't help. You try to rise above those little domestic concerns, physical concerns of trying to make your practice best and good, and take a philosophical view that I'm going to attain enlightenment or whatever. But still you haven't seen the experience of the dawn of enlightenment. And that dawn of enlightenment is a very desolate one. Once you begin to experience that, you begin to feel that universe is begin to segregate you from your existence, or other way around, or whatever, that you become completely ripped off. They even don't leave your heart or brain, and you have nothing to hang on to, but still they wouldn't let you die. It's something is holding on to, and that is what we call it in the Buddhist tradition is Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, that is hanging on to, which is a brave and a powerful state of existence which doesn't want to give away anything. Although it lost its reference point all over the place, down, up, here and there, right and left, hot or cold, happy or sad or whatever, that there is some things everything's been ripped off from where you exist, but still there is something is there, which is so sad, somewhat, depends on your point of view, I suppose, but desolate and non-existent and lonesome. That is the dawn of enlightenment, which is being made according to the scriptures and books, that is valuable to us, that everything is juicy and colorful, that you begin to feel that as if you are out of your bar mitzvah or your college degree or something, that people will give you, congratulate you with gold wristwatches or fountain pens or fat checks or what have you. But somehow at this point that there's nobody cares for you, even to present you with anything at all, except your own discovery that there is nothing exists. Therefore, that's greatest gift may be. When you think back later on, maybe, but at the time, somehow this experience is very lonesome and very unreal. I think one of the problems that we face is that we have never experienced a true sense of loneliness. That when you don't experience the true sense of loneliness, lonesomeness, whatever you like to call it, that you begin to find entirely different prospect, that you begin to discover the whole cosmos, whole universe is so empty, absolutely empty. It's utterly empty, and it doesn't help you, it doesn't keep you company. It's so much so that it becomes a companionship. It's contradictory in some sense, but it is experience that you can feel that. That is what's known as the state of shunyata, that point. And I think it is important for you to understand and realize that there is what we are talking about throughout the practice of meditation is we are not talking about particularly getting better and getting enormous reward because you said so much, you practice so much, you're being truthful to the technique and everything. We are not talking in terms of getting reward of anything at all, but we are talking in terms of further desolation, further dissolving process necessary. And it is absolutely important point, and that seems to be the issue, seems to be tonight anyway. Whether tomorrow or the day after or tonight, after this is, I leave it up to you people. Well, however, we should continue, and maybe in order to continue, that you could ask some questions if you like, and we could discuss and exchange. That if I should say too much, it becomes a further security, I suppose.
If what we have in store is further desolation, why do we keep sitting?
Because of it. Precisely. We sit because we haven't experienced ourselves. We sit because we haven't experienced our desolation. We sit because we haven't experienced enlightenment. And you have to sit until at the end. You don't have any body anymore.
Rinpoche, assuming you do exist, where does the action of the Bodhisattva come in? In this, it seems that at this time, practice only involves sitting, and everything else is just nothing then. it doesn't seem there's any purpose at all at this point. There doesn't seem any room for the bodhisattva. I mean, there's definite difference when you take the vow of the bodhisattva, isn't there?
Well, I mean, that seemed to be the basic point. When you take a vow of a bodhisattva, and then you have experience of that further desolation and further energy, that such desolation and such energy becomes a part of your existence, that you have no particular project, therefore you become useful to society and sentient beings, and you just express yourself as far as you can. It's cautionable that you can't be efficient. I mean, that's general sense that if you really like to be efficient, you have to be egoless. To be really efficient. Otherwise, that efficiency gets in the way, or egohood gets in the way. And the compassion becomes a problem rather than inspiration.
Thank you.
After or when one has experienced or confronted one's aloneness, who's left or what's left? Who's the one that's left alone?
I think that's that which non-existent, that which doesn't exist. But at the same time, we have to be very careful here. When we talk about it, that which doesn't exist, which automatically, by saying that which does exist, conditioned by existence, because therefore he can exist. He cannot exist. That there is the kind of flickering back and forth takes place, basically. But fundamentally, that the person who is experiencing whatever is experiencing non-existence, because there had been too much boundary, too much scenery, that the experience cannot take place unless there is non-existent scenery, non-existent boundary.
Is there any such thing as grace in the Buddhist tradition?
Patience. Forbearance. Exertion. Which brings a sense of dignity, which is precisely what grace means. Is that some kind of sense of sanity begin to enter into your system. From that point of view, Buddhist way of approaching the whole thing is very pragmatic, rather than the mystical, in the terms of mystical schools of the theistic traditions.
Hello? Until I'm fully conscious, will there always be a teacher around, inside my head that...
Can you say that again?
until I'm fully aware, until I'm fully centered and fully always telling myself what to do right and doing it, will there always be a teacher, somewhere, even though I don't see him, or I do, but I just don't, do you know what I mean?
I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
Do you have to have a teacher until you're fully conscious? Is there always a teacher?
Well, I think a teacher is an expression of your duality. Obviously, that there's you and the teacher. Until your notion of duality is completely fall apart, that you do need some teacher who is very personal and individual, who behaves like you in some sense, shares your human need, and who also dwells under the sky, rather than above the sky.
Okay.
Rinpoche, would you say that the hermit tradition of extensive retreat...
What tradition?
Hermit
What?
tradition of extensive retreat practices is a dead tradition?
Oh, hermit. I think that depends on that. If a hermit becomes a 100% hermit, that he goes into hermitage and he died in it. He got buried in his hermitage itself, and then he is somewhat a nuisance to society. But if hermit goes to hermitage and take his retreat, and then he's going to share his experience with others, then that becomes a contribution of sanity to society.
Rinpoche, is it important to read books and to study about shunyata, or is it enough to just sit and do it?
Both. That's the recommendation. I think you have to do both, because you have to learn how to read a book. In order to learn how to read a book, you have to experience what a book says so. So they both come together somewhat.
In speaking about shunyata, you seem to be emphasizing the form is emptiness aspect. And you touched upon that in emptiness there's some form, but you haven't said anything about form is form and emptiness is emptiness.
I think you said it. You're saying the same thing all over. Sky is blue, and blue is sky. Sky is sky, and blue is blue. Saying the same thing.
When you speak of the non-existence of things, what existence is there to compare them with? And
Compare with?
yeah, when you speak of non-existence, what then exists to make it reasonable to speak of non-existence?
Well, because non-existent exists.
how is this different than the model of just speaking of the oneness of things? Say that non-existence is, or existence is, but either way it's one.
Well, if you have to prove by existence, you have to prove by one exists because the two exist, zero exists. Whereas if you have experience of existence and non-existence, they both work together. And when we talk about a oneness, we talk about 100 million, thousands, billions, and trillions. That we have introduced another issue. But if you talk about existence, non-existence, it's just a life and death situation. And what could be beyond existence, there's no serial numbers involved with that. There's no computers necessary to sort out the problems.
Okay.
Good luck, sir. There's a lady over there.
Is there a correlation between shunyata and the fourth moment?
Well, the fourth moment is part of shunyata. And shunyata seems to be much more violent and a more desolate experience of the fourth moment. The fourth moment is coincidental, some kind of a jerk. Somebody reminds you what's happening. But shunyata is actually it, that's why it's more frightening and more desolate and more devastating.
What is the fourth moment?
You tell me. That's it. There's a gentleman in red over there.
Awareness. The first few times I came here, it was really great. I thought I was really getting something. I thought I was really understanding you. And the last few talks have been kind of painful. The quality of non-existence. Could you say that although nothing exists, and it's a sense of an absolute, there is a relationship between the non-existence? Who knows? That maybe in a sense that, like you were saying about, like we're being here, like what we've come to understand, that maybe there's no meaning in that, but there does exist some kind of meaningfulness in the relationship of us being here. Right.
Well, I think we are beating the bush.
Okay. How about this?
Yes.
Out of this. The quality of loneliness, or the fundamental quality of loneliness. Within that, or in that, is something like a relationship with yourself born out of that?
Yourself?
Yeah.
Well, that's the point. That you don't exist, therefore you can't even be lonely. Usually when we talk about it, the superficial loneliness is that you feel lonely because you don't have a companion or entertainment, things are too desolate. But this case, when we talk about that, is consistent and the continual loneliness that exists in you, which means you begin to feel that you don't exist. So anything else might try to entertain, play music, entertain you, give you food and shelter, and crack jokes around you, but still that there's a big hole inside you, which can't contain anything. And that's the basic loneliness that we are talking about, rather than purely situational loneliness. We are talking about a bigger scale at this point. That your stomach has a big hole. You can't contain anything, your breath or your food, that everything goes through.
Thank you.
Good luck, sir. Think about it. I think it's important to look into that particular fundamental loneliness. Is the basic point of understanding Shunyata experience. But don't just abandon the idea, but just experience yourself and trying to find out how it exists within your state of being. And it does exist in everybody's state of experience. It is possible. It does happen all the time, including animals. It doesn't have to be human being particularly. In that sense of a big hole that you can't contain anything. That you're trying to ride your horse, that horse doesn't have a back.
If we are totally alone, how do we take refuge in the Buddha?
Because of it. Buddha was once a lonely person. He still is. That's possible, that you can identify with the Buddha, that he doesn't exist and so do you.
Rinpoche, would you liken what seems to be going on to most of us in this room, more to a dream or to a vacuum? What kind of non-existence is it more like?
More to a dream?
Excuse me?
More to a dream, did you say?
Yes, I said, would you liken it more to a dream which seems very real to the dreamer until he wakes up? Or to a vacuum, which just isn't there at all?
Well, I think I prefer to be in the vacuum than to the dream. And we have too much dreams. They've been presented in the course of an Naropa Institute's program. And there's not enough of vacuum that's been created in the program of Naropa Institute. And I'm glad you begin to appreciate that. Good luck, sir. If we're talking about the vacuum property, we should close this point. There's some announcement I think need to be made, so please don't leave, which might concern you.